What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today is, I feel like every day is an exciting day because we're gonna be doing some cool stuff. So today the guys actually surprised me by putting my truck on the dyno. Right?
Thank you.
Well, it was on my list of things to do this week because we need to dyno this truck with the Garrett PowerMax turbo, which is on it currently, and then we want to put the stock 05 or 06 turbo on it, which is like the smallest factory turbo that you get. There's a couple differences. It has smaller compressor, smaller turbine. It has a 13 blade turbine wheel, so you lose a lot of that like aggressive turbo whistle. So this currently has the Garrett PowerMax Stage 1, which has a 10 blade turbo, which has a lot of whistle. So it sounds super, super cool. You get that distinctive 6-liter sound. But since we were developing the compound turbo kit, we are gonna use the factory 05 or 06 turbo, which is the smallest one, so it'll spool up quicker. And then we put the big S475 Borg Warner on top of that as the atmospheric turbocharger. And then that's where you get all the power and everything on there. And then that turbo should have some good whistle to it, I hope. So we definitely want to get some baseline numbers on this thing. So we're gonna dyno the PowerMax first, then we're gonna go ahead and do the stock turbo. And then eventually once we get the kit and everything done, we'll have baseline numbers and then we'll do the compound setup. So pretty stoked on that. Again, it's basically, you know, 300,000 mile stock 6.0 Powerstroke, stock injectors, all the other stuff obviously been like replaced at some point, but you know, stock sizing. So we're gonna go ahead and get a couple things hooked up on this thing to run. One of the things about this truck, or I guess dynoing an automatic car or truck, is that you don't really have a good RPM signal. So like when we're dynoing with a manual transmission car, I just go in manually and I set the wheel speed and I say, okay, this wheel speed means that we're at 3,000 RPMs. And then we kind of do the runs that way, so we don't have to hook up an ignition coil or anything like that to get an RPM. Whereas on a diesel, you don't really have any of that. So what I have right here, this is a photogenic cell right there. So you can see that little red dot. And then right here in the front, actually you can't really see it, but I put a piece of aluminum tape up there. And then so that should, in theory, as it rotates around, pick up the RPM from that. So that way, you know, we're accounting for like any torque converter slip or any weird things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and play with a couple settings on the Peric dyno controller over here. And then we're gonna try to get it to go. So what you have to do is you go to projects, and then I think you right click. That's the boring part, so we'll get it all figured out and then we'll go from there. All right, so we got the project loaded in here. We're gonna see right here with the engine speed source, we're gonna see if the RPM actually comes up and works. Nothing yet. So we gotta figure that out. It shows the lost power at like 300, so I'm gonna say that's a lie, because I didn't let it coast down. So we'll do another. So what did that make? 725 horse, 1169 torque. I feel like it's lying because right now it does a lost power calculation. So like it calculates the coast down and the exhaust brake is on in this tune. So what I'm gonna do is at the end of the run is I'm gonna put it in neutral and let it coast down and then select that part where it's in neutral for the coast down. And then that should give us an accurate drivetrain loss. But yeah, that's in 5th gear. Wide open. After a certain point, I kind of have to let it get a little over 2,000 RPMs, and then I smash it. But it sounds good. It sounds freaking healthy. It sounds like it's ripping. So we're gonna fire it back up and do another run. 397 and 690. So that's fully uncorrected. Just basically everything that this dyno is set at. So I was looking at my phone. I did the ghetto log where I just filmed the gauges, and I think it showed like 24 pounds of boost. So it's not even really at like full boost, and we are on the EcoBeast towing tune. So I might put it on the extreme file and see how that does, see if we pick up any more power. The other thing we could do is go road speed. So there you go again, 691. So and really what we're trying to do here is get as much data as we possibly can. Obviously, if we're putting on a compound turbo and we're developing a compound turbo kit and we want to sell a compound turbo kit, we want to be able to compare the numbers. So again, this is a Garrett PowerMax, and we will put the stock turbo back on it. But one thing I'm curious about is with the stock turbo, it really felt like it fell off really hard up top. Whereas you can see right here, the power keeps kind of building. So as the RPM increases, again, we almost got up to 4,000 RPM up there at 3,800 RPM, which these 6 liters like to be rev. 3,800 RPM, we're making basically the peak power at redline, you know, peak horsepower. Peak torque is right here, about 2,600. And I am curious if I was able to get into it a little bit sooner, if it would make any more power. So we're gonna go ahead and switch it to like the extreme file, see how that goes. But yeah, that's just trying to get some data. I'm honestly not really happy with what I'm able to get. Just, you know, I wish I was able to do like a full data log like in HP Tuners or something, but it's not really showing me the stuff that I'd really like to see. But yeah, not bad. And again, that's fully uncorrected right there with the engine speed. It's just a tool. So same dyno, same conditions, we should be able to put it back on here and at least compare these numbers, the power graph, to how it is in the future. All right, so we talked to Matt Story from Blessed Performance. He's the one who tuned this truck, and I was just asking him what made sense as far as like the correction factors and all that stuff, and he said pretty much where we were at right here. He said that's pretty much right where he would land on his dyno with like a super healthy truck on a stage 2 turbo, which is essentially what the Garrett PowerMax is. So yeah, you can kind of see where I started the run right here, went up, kind of rolled into it a little bit just to try to get it to go up in the speed without downshifting into fourth. And then you can see right here, 691 foot-pounds of torque at like 2,600 RPMs. You can still see right there, 2,500 makes 670. So this thing really, like when it's towing, it really likes to be about 2,500 to 3,000 RPM. And you can see that's where all of our torque is with the horsepower as well. The interesting thing is too, is I'm curious to see how a stock turbo kind of rolls over on the top. But you can see right there, 397 horsepower at 3,800 RPM. So pretty decent power. Seems like everything is running really good. And he said that if it's making that much power, it's a really healthy truck. I'm gonna go ahead and do another run on the EcoBeast towing tune, which is what we did that last run on. I just want to log all the ICP and the sensors and all the other stuff. We figured out how to do a full data log on the edge and actually export it to a computer, which is exactly what I want. I want to be able to see all of the data with the boost pressure, the ICP, you know, all of this stuff. So we should be good with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do another pretty much exact same run, see if the numbers line up again, and then we're gonna put it on the extreme file and see how that does. He said it should make a little bit more if everything is healthy with the truck as far as like, you know, high pressure oil system and O-rings and all that stuff. So I'm gonna hop back in the truck, do another run. All right, so on that one, I think because the truck actually had a chance to cool off a little bit more, made a little bit more power, a little bit more torque. So we went ahead and loaded in the Blessed Extreme file, and we're gonna see what that does now. So here's the final two runs. You can see this one right there. 428 horsepower and 738 foot-pounds of torque, and that was in the EcoBeast towing tune with the truck after it had sat down and cooled down for quite a while. So you can see we almost picked up 40 foot-pounds of torque and about 30 some horsepower, but you can see there's a little difference in the lost power right there. The lost power is when it coasts down and all that other stuff. So there could be a 20 horsepower discrepancy in there between the lost power and this. But here's were the last two runs that we did. So EcoBeast tow, and then this was on the race file. So this one actually made a little bit more torque, but a little bit less horsepower. Very similar lost power. The last run was right after we did the other one, so only about a 5-minute break. I didn't have a chance to cool down very much between the last run and then the very last run. So yeah, again, talked to Matt. He said everything looks good, and the truck seems really healthy. So now the next thing that we're gonna do is stick the stock turbo back on here and I'm really curious to see how the torque and the power and where it moves in the RPM. I'm assuming the stock turbo is probably going to fall off a little bit up here, because that's how it feels when you're towing. So I think that's why I've liked this turbo so much, is because it feels so good towing, because you know, the more RPM you give it, the more power it's essentially making, and it does seem to really like to be in the 2,500 to 3,000 range, which makes sense because there's all that power and all that torque kind of right there. So now that everything is good and hot, Eric's gonna go ahead and pull that Stage 1 Garrett PowerMax off of here and put on the stock unit and see how much less power it ends up making. Alright, so Eric got the other 06 turbo in here. So I believe 05, 06, and 07, or 06 and 07 is like the smallest turbos that they make on these things, which means that they spool up quicker, but they make less top end power. And again, that's why we took off the big turbo to gain a little bit of low end spool, but then we put in the big compound on it, and then we'll get that top end on it, and then the low EGTs, right? Right? She'll rip then, right? Oh wow, watch out. Hey, watch out, buddy. That's all we gotta do. All right, Eric's got the turbo on here. So as soon as that's all done, we're gonna do some more dyno runs. See how much power this thing's gonna make.
Wait, what turbo did you put on here?
The 07 one, 06, 07.
Which one was on there? The PowerMax?
PowerMax, look at that, big dog.
So you think it's gonna make more power?
No, less power. Order of operations, we do big turbo dyno, stock turbo dyno. So then we say, okay, well, this is what your truck would make with a stock turbo. So this is what it would act like with a big turbo, which would be like a little bit laggier, but more power up top. And then put the compound turbo on it. And then we show that hopefully, again, we don't know yet because we haven't dynoed it, which is you maintain your low end spool, but then you gain a lot of top end power with lower EGTs because you have a lot more airflow because of the bigger turbo. So that's the whole point of this whole operation. So.
Good. And then dyno this one next.
We'll dyno that one.
See how slow it is.
Yep. All right, so we have the factory 06 turbo on this unit. Here you go. We're gonna fire it up. We're gonna see how lame this thing sounds now. All right, so I got the truck warmed up a little bit. We're gonna go ahead and make our first pull. Still in the extreme tune. So we'll do the extreme, then the toe boss, and then we'll actually just put it back to a stock tune and see what it does on that. All right. Oh my goodness, hold on. All right, so here's a couple runs. Right here we are comparing yesterday's run with the extreme file versus today's run with the extreme file, and just kind of comparing, you know, where you are horsepower, torque, where it comes in the dyno graph and where it falls off in the dyno graph. So you can see right here, the red line, that's our horsepower down below, and the blue line right here, that is the torque with the stock turbo. So you can see right here, stock turbo, we're able to pick up a lot more power quicker. And again, I kind of have to wait until after 2,000 RPMs to floor it, because otherwise it just wants to downshift. But it seems like with the stock turbo, you're able to make a little bit more boost. This thing's idling at like 1 pound of boost, you know, pretty much with the stock turbo with the vanes closed. So then you can see up here, pretty much make within one torque of each other right there. Peak horsepower on the stock turbo right here, 376 horsepower versus 430. So right there, what is that? That's almost 60 horsepower. And then right here, as far as torque goes, let's say 3,500 RPMs, 550 foot-pounds of torque, stock turbo versus 640 foot-pounds of torque. So there's pretty much 90 torque and 60 horsepower in the upper range of the thing. So I guess more so what we're seeing is, like, if you're not really planning on making a race truck or doing anything like that, like the Garrett, the PowerMax doesn't really make that big of a difference if you're between 2,000 and 3,000 RPMs. Everything right there looks pretty good. The stock turbo actually comes on harder right there. but you could see where the stock turbo kind of falls off a little bit more up top, and not necessarily that it even falls off, it just doesn't make as much power up top. You could see right here around 2,500 RPM where they cross over, the Garrett PowerMax just continues to make more and more power as RPM go up, whereas the stock turbo just kind of flattens out and then falls off a little bit. And you could even see I let out of this pull a little bit earlier just because it didn't feel as strong. So, and again, this was on the extreme tune. Yeah, so it, I mean, it seemed to run good. It seemed to, you know, seem like everything was happy. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and do another run in the EcoBeast tune and see how that looks. All right, so on the stock, 100% stock file, other than this thing does have like a 40 horsepower Ficum tune, which does make a difference. You can see right here, look at that, 120 foot-pounds of torque right there, and then 290 horsepower versus 340. So 50 horse, 120 some foot-pounds of torque, lost right there. And then you could see as we hit the, you know, the 97 mile an hour speed limiter, 98 I think is where it is, that's the road speed, that's where it just gave us the limiter. And I don't think I have like another stock tune file that, you know, overrides the factory thing, because on these runs we were literally getting up to 140 some miles an hour, which is crazy. But yeah, so that just kind of shows you what like a stock tune would do. And again, there is increased horsepower there because of the Ficum tune, so we are getting a little bit more fuel as well. Yeah, I guess that's it for the dyno runs. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing off the dyno. I'm gonna drive it home tonight. I wanna see how it drives with the stock turbo with the blessed tunes, because I've never driven it with the blessed tunes on it, with the Ficum tune and all that other stuff. When it's just idling and you turn it off, it like compressor surges because it's sitting there idling at like 2 pounds of boost because we have the whistle tune on it. So it's a cool little deal, but yeah, we'll go ahead and get this thing unstrapped and pull it off the dyno. All right, so in order to get the truck off the dyno, because it's so long, it has to like go down, and then we use the ramps. So it's actually like crawling up the ramp in order to get on the dyno, on or off the dyno. So because the truck is just physically too long to fit on the 4-post by itself. All right, so we're taking her out on a drive. All right, so we're in the EcoBeast towing tune, and you can definitely feel just the like more throttle response. It feels like it's lighting the turbo a little bit sooner, which makes sense. Yeah, just like right off throttle. With the other turbo, you kind of did have to wait for it to spool up a little bit more. And really, the stock turbo, you know, you spend most of your time between like 1,800 and 3,000 RPMs on a 6-liter anyhow, unless you're racing. Stock turbo is definitely not bad. When you want more power and more high RPM stuff, that's where the other one comes in. But I'm really curious to see exactly how it's gonna be once we stick that big dog on there over the stock turbo. So, really stoked about that. Good old 6-liter, runs pretty good, even with a stock turbo on it. But I'm really excited to get that compound turbo setup on it, and we should be doing that within the next week. Really stoked to have the dyno at the shop and be able to actually get our own data. And again, numbers are numbers. You know, the dyno is a measuring tool, and as long as we are in the same conditions, the same gear, the same everything, we will at least be able to compare our, you know, initial results to the results that we get when we have compound setup on it. So let me know what you guys think about this. I'm really curious to see how it's gonna be. Yeah, appreciate you guys watching this video. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the month of maybes. See you in the next one.